That's a greeting in Philippine. The good thing about traveling within the Pacific region is everywhere you go, there's families. You run into someone related to you one way or the other. And I would thank you very much for the Bashai students. That was very heartfelt. My name is Emiliana Musrasrik, and the last name, as you can tell, is Kashayan. I'm part Kashayan, I'm part Morlakis. I'm Pohnpian by birth, and I'm learning English, as all of you. English is our either second, third, fourth language. So thank you all for coming today. I'd like to join FID in thanking all the organizers. But really, the person that I would like to thank especially is FID for organizing all this. It just so happened, I didn't know FID 2 weeks ago. But it just so happened I was communicating with our consulate offices and with friends and saying, look, I'm coming out. I was in Guam about 2 weeks ago, and I was explaining to folks in Guam about the work that we do, which I will go into a little bit later about the Micronesia Center, and basically wanting to make the connection, trying to find who the referral service providers are and see how we can all work together to benefit our citizens, especially those that are migrating out into the United States. And so someone said, here's FIT's number, please communicate with her. And so that's how we connected, and that's how I'm here. At first I didn't realize I was coming to Hilo. I thought, you know, Hawaii, and I take it for granted. FIT is in Oahu. So then through the communications, because you were in Oahu then, right? At some point of the communication, he was in Oahu. So I thought I was meeting him in Oahu with UAH, but it even made my life easier and even more happier that I'm here in Hilo instead, seeing a lot of familiar faces. My daughter, I know she hates, she doesn't want me introducing her, but she is my daughter, Esmeralda, and she goes to school here. And I see a lot of nieces here, and I'm sure with the Boshayan students here, if we go in detail about your roots, I'm sure 1 or 2 or 3 of you are either my niece or nephew. So the world just gets smaller and smaller. But thank you very much for the lei, the marmor. This is, again, very... this is our island hospitality, so kalangan, we just thank you very much. Again, I feel like a queen here. I may have to take it off because it's kind of
You can take it off if you want.
Thank you.
I'll hold it for you.
With all due respect, I'm gonna keep it, I'll take it with me after the
Don't worry, I'll be a queen.
presentation.
Happy?
But, all right. Like I said, I'm Pohnpeian, born and raised. I've been working with IOM, or International Organization for Migration, for a little over 3 years. Prior to working with IOM, I was working with the U.S. Peace Corps and as a safety security coordinator. My job there was to train our Peace Corps volunteers the do's and the don'ts living in Micronesia. Now, with the new project that I'm running under the Micronesia Center, or under IOM called the Micronesia Center, I'm now training, teaching our citizens the do's and the don'ts in living in the United States. So it's sort of like an opposite of what I used to do. And a lot of people would say, well, why are you doing this? Very simple. I love the people. I have the passion for it. And I know there's a lot of job opportunities out there, but I can't think of myself doing anything else but what I'm doing now. So that's why I'm here. Again, thank you so much for being here. So I would like to start off first by, how did I go down? Maybe giving a little bit of history of who we are. Just a little bit of what is IOM, who we are. So a little bit of an introduction. IOM, or International Organization for Migration, is an intergovernmental organization. There are 157 member states so far. RMI recently became a member state of IOM. We are working currently with Palau, and hoping that Palau soon will become a member state. Basically, for IOM, we work to ensure the orderly and humane management, migration for benefit of all, and to promote international cooperation on migration issues. This is also to assist in the search for practical solutions for migrations, and mainly to provide humanitarian assistance. Now, FEMA used to be in our islands. This is the Federal Emergency Management under USAID. It's still in the world. However, IOM took over that responsibility. So for you students, you probably still don't remember, but FEMA would come into the islands when there's a natural disaster. We help on reconstruction, on buildings, houses, and providing food and shelter. So it's all the humanitarian assistance. IOM is all over the world, and if you go on the website, you'll find even the countries where there's refugees, displacement of people, we are there. IOM is usually on the ground first. So IOM established its presence in the FSM. This was in August of 2009. FSM in 2011, December, became a member state of IOM. And February 2012, there was a bilateral agreement that was signed, sort of cementing the relationship between IOM and the Federated System of Micronesia. In March of 2013, we're very fortunate to have the first Migrant Resource Center open in Pohnpei. This is the first in the Pacific, funded by IOM Development Fund, or IDF. So we started that office. It's a project under the Migrant Resource Center, under the IOM. I'm very happy to say that in April of 2014, we opened an extension of our Migrant Resource Center in Chuuk. So now we have a Migrant Resource Center in Pohnpei and in Chuuk. From here, I leave in about a week back. I will be stopping in Majuro. And again, we will be opening another office in the RMI. So we're very happy. So what does the Migrant Resource Center do? Okay. We're established to promote safe migration and smooth integration of our citizens, that's Micronesian citizens, into the United States. And like I said, we officially opened in March 2013. So we're very young, we're still in the incubator stage, about 2 years old. We also have on the right here, you see a photo. Through the help of our host state, State of Pohnpei, and the Pohnpei Port Authority, they donated this information, put at the airport at no cost, as a Pohnpei host state contribution, host country contribution. So during flight time, during departure time, we have volunteers or interns at the information center providing assistance to anyone in need of help on custom forms, any questions, inquiries regarding on the plane, the check-in luggages and all that. In terms of training, we have included, our trainings, by the way, are free of charge, it's no cost. And we include our national government, state government, the local. The key member of our organization are the traditional leaders. Without them, nothing would have worked. In Micronesia, there's a saying that any activity, any project that you endure without the blessings of our traditional leaders is destined for failure. And so before we started this program, I had to meet with our traditional leaders, first of all, to explain what we're doing and to seek their blessings. And also because the work of the Migrant Resource Center will be out in the community outreach program. We have to get the blessings of our traditional leaders. And I'll tell you in a bit, but we completed the first year with a lot of success stories. We have, I guess, impressed our leaders, and so the funding for the second year operation is funded through our FSM government, Congress appropriation, and also to open our June office. And of course the civil members, civil society members. Okay, before proceeding on to this slide, let me ask among the audience here, who can share his or her experience traveling to a foreign country? Give us your most embarrassing moment, most scariest, most funniest. Now I know that all of you have gone through an experience, one or more. All right, volunteers. If you don't volunteer, I'm gonna point. So, would you like to share just an experience that you faced while traveling on the plane, maybe getting stuck on an elevator, or I'm seeing you don't have any problems?
I've got problems. I have lots of problems.
All right.
But the first time I went on a plane, this was back in 1982. I didn't speak English well, and nobody told me how to put my seatbelt on the plane. So that was embarrassing because I struggled a lot with that. I didn't know how to do it.
See? Thank you. One more. Margaret, you must have. I told you, if you don't raise hand, I'm going to point.
No, when I arrived in Oahu, driving on the freeway from the airport to my auntie's house, I was so scared. Like, this is too fast for me. So, yeah, that was a scary moment.
Okay. Well, see, so every one of us have had some experience, difficulty either on the plane, fastening seatbelts. I mean, in our trainings, I'll go through some of the examples that we go through, but as funny as they may sound, it's true. And that's how we're able to modify our training modules to to make sure that it is Micronesian, it's consistent to our Micronesian needs. These are the needs that we, our citizens are seeking. And so, all right, well, thank you, Margaret, for sharing that. And maybe later on, if somebody have that urge wanting to share that funniest moment, he or she can share with us. But as you all know, under the Compact of Free Association with the United States, it allows FSM citizens, FES, Free Associated States citizens to travel freely into the U.S. and its territories without any restriction. We don't have to get a visa. We don't need to get a green card in order to work. We can live indefinitely in the United States. Okay, that's great. However, with the high influx of migration into the United States, particularly in Guam and in Hawaii, there has been a lot of concerns raised by those two countries of the Micronesians calling the compact impact. Because of this compact agreement, there has been a lot of problems faced in terms of the legal, the medical, the educational sectors, because our citizens are taking over a lot of these sectors. Now, Migrant Resource Center is pro-migration, okay? We advocate for migration. It's good. People travel, people migrate for better life, to get a better education, medical care, and the list goes on and on and on. But as citizens, we have responsibilities to behave as good citizens, to make sure that we abide by the laws, the culture of the country in which you're going to, the United States. So that's why we exist. That's why we open our doors. In March 2013, the Migrant Resource Center opened to combat these issues of the migration issue of our citizens going abroad. So here you see, these are the pre-departure orientation training. We refer to it as starting the journey. So first, it's a 2-day workshop. It's open for anyone. It's free of charge. And these are the courses that we go through. The passport issuance. So we invite our friends, folks from immigration, as guest speaker, and they tell us that how do you get your passport? What are the process? What are the procedures? If you lose your passport in the United States, what do you do? Where do you go? So these are the things that we go through. And even on the plane, we invite our friends from United Airlines to come and talk about the seat belts. This is how you put on the seat belts, and make sure when you're in the laboratories, we're used to the doorknobs. Well, on the plane, as you all know, it's not using the doorknob, it's a slide. So make sure you slide it till it's tightly closed so nobody walks in on you, okay? The flush, it's not the normal flush that we're used to, it's a push button on the side. Now, we take it for granted that everybody knows this. Based on the trainings that we conduct over and over and over, we hear the same stories, even new ones coming from our students or the audience. Well, how do you do this? How do you do that? And so we start from basic, as if all of us are equal, none of us have traveled, and so we take it one step at a time. And like I said, we call it the starting the journey. So we also discuss about finding a job and understanding the workplace, that there is no such thing as Micronesian time in the United States. Yeah, I see a lot of nods, okay? So when your interview is at 10 o'clock, you better be there before, maybe give yourself an hour before, and don't show up at 10:30 and say, well, I had a flat tire, or the same common excuses that we hear over and over. The health facility, the medical care. We encourage the health insurance, how critical it is to make sure that you have health insurance, because it's very expensive out here. And the services that are also available, like the public health, that are also services that are available. Getting a license, there's, again, strong emphasis on DUI. A lot of cases, I know here in Hawaii and also in Guam, you don't just get on your vehicle and drive down the street. If you do not have a valid, not just a license, if you do not have a valid driver's license, you cannot be driving. You have no business behind the wheel driving on the street. And also being drunk, DUI. We covered law and the role of police, okay? It's also very important that people understand their constitutional rights. You have the right to remain silent. You have the right for an attorney if you cannot afford one. In Guam, 2 weeks ago, I met with the Attorney General, Guam Attorney General, and I was very glad to hear that there is an interpreter NGO, an NGO that deals with interpreters on Guam of all nationalities, so all 4 states included. And that seemed to be one of the major problems, because when someone is brought to court, he or she does not understand the language. I mean, the language is one thing, but the court terminologies, I worked for the Supreme Court for 18 years. I used to translate in the court. It's not as easy. A person understanding the language doesn't necessarily mean, if I say arraignment, that you would know exactly what it is. There's no one word definition of arraignment. You have to explain one word, legal word, in a full sentence, could be a full paragraph. So you literally explain the steps that occurs during an arraignment or a pre-trial and a trial, so all of that. So it's a very complicated process. And so now we know we are forming a partnership with that organization, so we know that there is such thing, it exists in Guam to help our citizens. Housing and accommodation is also, it's very important to understand the differences. Where do you find housing? The lease agreement. You know, when the lease says 5 tenants, it means 5 individuals. It doesn't mean 5 extended families. Okay? So these are things that we go through. Education system, it's also very important. And especially us parents with children, minor children. The child abuse. We explain to our citizens that the teachers, the principals, the health providers, even the police, are trained to detect children that are abused. If you leave a bruise on your child, the teachers or the principals have the right to report. You take the child away. You may end up losing your children. But the reason I brought this up is in Micronesia, okay, disciplining our children, I can spank my children, and that's a form of our discipline. Okay. I mean, I grew up at a generation where that's the form of discipline. If I come home late, if I talk back, being disrespectful, I would get spanked by my mother, and that's fine. You know, we accepted that, but now you don't see that a lot. Children are understanding more of their rights, but you cannot do that in the United States, or you will be charged with child abuse, with assault. You know, there's a lot more. And over and over, one of the things we learn, and this is an example of the constitutional rights, people not understanding their Miranda rights. The police walks up, did you beat him up? Oh yes, I beat him up, I wanted to kill him. I mean, in Micronesia, we're very proud people. And so that's kind of a showing that, well, yeah, I'm the tougher guy, I can beat him up. Well, guess what? What you don't understand is when you said, yes, I did, and yes, I wanted to beat him up, you just admitted you're probably an assault with dangerous weapon, and not only that, but threatening. Maybe you might be charged with attempted murder, who knows? But the crime, your category of the crime that just committed just keeps going and going. Higher depending on what you tell the police. So those are just to preview some of the things that we go through under the pre-departure orientation training. Excuse me. We have a working partner with the College of Micronesia, FSM. Now with the U.S. colleges and universities that are affiliated with COM FSM, College of Micronesia, are requiring that students enrolling into those colleges and universities must undergo some pre-departure orientation training. But because the college currently do not have such program, we provide that at no cost to the students. And we issue certificates at the end, so that's sort of like their ticket into the admission into the colleges and the universities. Awareness raising on the risk of human trafficking, that is also part of the training, pre-departure orientation training that we conduct. There's a section after this which I'll go in more detail. But currently, there are no human trafficking cases, thank you, known cases in Micronesia. There are suspected cases, but not at the moment. And I'll tell you in a little bit later here the process where we are in terms of the standing under the TIP report. Referral service providers in U.S. on legal, medical, and other social welfare matters. That is really why I'm here. It's good to see all of you. But at the same time, we would like to build our partnership, collaboration between the existing service providers that are available. And I'm so fortunate this morning, earlier I was talking to Linda about the service that she provides. And even on Oahu, I met with We Are Oceania. I've met with our consulate officers. There's a coalition on domestic violence in Guam, behavior health in Guam. So these are the organizations that we're working, trying to build this collaboration between them so that when our citizens are here, we can, if we know someone leaving, we can link them to these organizations. And really, we're all in for the same purpose, and that is to help lift this issue of, I hate to use the word discrimination, but to help our citizens to understand that it's a different world out here. You have the right to travel, to migrate into a foreign country. However, you have a responsibility to behave according to respect the culture, to understand what the laws are. You can't bring what we're used to back home, what we get away with, and say, well, in Pohnpei, I can spank my children because that's one way of, I was gonna say culture, but again, it is not culture. It is not culture to beat your wife. It is not culture to be misbehaving. It is not culture to be drinking and driving. So all of these are some of the subjects that we cover under the pre-departure orientation training. I want to share with you the Migrant, FSM Migrant survey that was conducted in 2012, and this is by our SPOC office, and the others were Fran Hiesel, Father Hiesel, I'm sure a lot of you know Fran Hiesel, and Michael Levine. Now in that report, it shows that, this is again as of July 2012, there are 49,000, about 50,000 FSM citizens abroad. In Guam, there's 13,500, CNMI 4,200, in Hawaii 79, probably 8,000 currently. Okay, and then in the U.S. mainland, there are 24,000. In this report, it also shows, the report by the way is online, so you can look online. It's a comprehensive report. Choices of destination, Guam and CNMI. Our citizens chose the two countries because of its proximity. It's right there with Micronesia, very close. It's right, Guam especially is right in the center. So Guam is now seen as the first stop. Our citizens migrate to Guam, get settled, get to know a little bit more about the United States before then moving here to Honolulu. Based on the report, it says that Hawaii is favored because of its medical treatment. You have better medical facility, and so a lot of our citizens choose to come here. U.S. seem to be favored. It's a new destination now. We see a trend of our migration out to the U.S. mainland. More than 50% of the migrants just within the last 5 years, elect to move to the U.S., 2/3 by step migration. Now, we've also seen a pattern, like, especially in the U.S. mainland. In some states, you will have a little community of Pohnpeian, and then there's a Chuukese community, and then there's a Hoshayan community. And usually, it will be the first, usually the father or the eldest son will travel to the U.S. and then get established, find a job, find a home, and then you see now maybe the wife will travel, or the kids will then start moving slowly to the United States. So even in the U.S. now, there's a lot of little communities with Micronesians there. And the last, it says, welfare benefits does not seem to be a factor. Before I joined the Migrant Resource Center, or before I joined IOM, I used to think that, Micronesians, we love the food stamp, and that's why we moved to the U.S. to get all the welfare benefits. But as it turns out in this report, that's not the case. Keep in mind that children that are born in the United States, even if the parents are Micronesian, that child, when born in the United States, automatically becomes a U.S. citizen. But that child is entitled for all the U.S. benefits, welfare benefits that are available. And the children that are born in the United States are not counted in the survey. So again, the number 49,000 could be higher if we were to count the children that are born in the United States. Do you see any familiar faces here? One of whom is sitting right here in this. I wanted to show up, this is our first graduates of our pre-departure orientation training. Okay, there's SB, where are you? Here. Yvonne is a graduate of Hilo. And people usually ask, like, how many staff do you have? I said, well, when I first opened, it was just me. You're looking at one person. So how was it that you were so successful? How did you get this high number of beneficiaries? And that is because of volunteers, student volunteers like this, and interns. We have a very limited budget. Under the IOM budget, the Migrant Resource Center has the least funding, very least number of staff. But the one program, one project that really impacts our citizens, we really go to the grassroots.
Just as an aside, Yvonne was a helper, highly engaged learning placement participant. This is a program, internship program we send our students to the islands to engage in the growth.
So just to give an example of how our interns work. So Yvonne visited Pohnpei for during one of the summers, and I said, okay, come work for me. I'll pay you as an intern. We don't have a lot of money, but you can work for me as an intern. So I trained her. She became one of our trainers. So under the training of trainers, she was a trainer for under the Migrant Resource Center, and I would send her out to the communities. She speaks very well locally, and so she's back. She graduated. She's now back. Now I hired her as a consultant, so she's working on our manual for anti-human trafficking manual. But that's how we work. You know, we try to capture the students that are just coming back, someone who needs a job. We don't pay much, but this is a good place. It's a resource center. This is where you gain the experience. We write good reference letters. Looking at some who are graduating soon. Margaret, I understand, will be graduating in May. But it's a resource center that is friendly to everyone. It's right on the main street. If you happen to be visiting Pohnpei, please come by. It's where central building, first floor. You're welcome. So, human trafficking. As I said, we currently do not have any cases that are known. human trafficking cases, but there are suspected cases in Micronesia. How many of you are familiar with the Blue House case in Guam?
Familiar about reading it or
Being like aware of this case. All right, the Blue House case is known as the Blue House case. This is a case involving 10 Chuukese women that were lured to Guam to go work in the hotel industry. When they arrived in Guam, they were forced into prostitution work. Their passports were taken away. The salary that were promised that they were going to be making was not what they were making. They were locked up in this Blue House. It's a bar, karaoke bar, and was told if they report this to anyone that they will be killed. So they were threatened. They were forced to do sex exploitation. They were actually exploited, sexual exploitation. To make it worse, there were some Guam police officers that were involved. So they see law enforcement coming in uniform, of course, they were scared, and they didn't tell anyone. So they continued, they performed the services for a couple of years until one of the girls leaked the information out to a friend who reported. Now the case, the owner of Blue House Karaoke Bar, the owners were prosecuted and currently serving jail time. And of course, the police officers were terminated and also serving jail time. They were convicted. The reason I brought this case up is because this case happened in 2010. And this is when U.S. State Department really came down strong on the Federated States of Micronesia and said, what laws do you have in place that is available to protect your citizens? Well, guess what? We didn't have any laws in place. 2010, none. We didn't have any. So the National Congress in December of 2012 passed its first anti-human trafficking legislation. That was December 2012. Followed suit by all the 4 states in January 2013. We're only in 2015. Coincidentally, the Migrant Resource Center opened its doors in March of 2013. So we worked in partnership with our FSM Department of Justice, national government, and launched an island-wide meaning all the 4 states, campaign against human trafficking. And so that is why there is no cases yet, known cases. It's fairly new. We are still going around giving, conducting the training and awareness raising. People are now just learning what is human trafficking. In my trainings, when I said, what do you think human trafficking is, people would say, prostitution. And so when I say, well, do you know that prostitution is legal in some states? People would get freaked out. Really? This is, yeah, it is a business in some states. Okay. So it's very important that people understand, especially our citizens, understand what is human trafficking and what do you do when you suspect of a crime. Who do you report to? So because it's fairly new, we work closely with our law enforcement. Because as of January 2013, when the FSM, the states, 4 states passed its legislations, it's one thing to have the legislations in place. It's another to really understand what it is. And even our police officers, the Department of Public Safety, do not have the standard operating procedures on how to deal with cases, reported cases on human trafficking. So we work very closely with them to establish such procedures so that the cases, especially the report, the caller, the informant's identity is kept very confidential, and everything else, how it's handled, is kept, it's handled well. Because our Micronesian islands are very small. Everybody knows one another. So if I go around and said, oh, by the way, Margaret just called and said that you were trafficking people, her life, I just put her life in danger. And her family. That's just how small it is. So it's very critical that we start from the bottom, make sure that everything is in place before in addition to the training of our citizens on the awareness. So this is the presentation that we give on anti-human trafficking. We're not here, I'm not here to scare you. I hear it says that there is a video to be played. Unfortunately, because of the limited time, we will not be able to watch this video. However, I promise I will leave that with you, so you can watch it at your leisure when you have. And also, I will leave a copy of the video. This is on the migration, showcasing Migrant Resource Center, showcasing our first year accomplishment. By the way, for those who came earlier, we have handouts at the registration desk, so please get a copy. It gives the fact sheet of the Migrant Resource Center, and also there's a page on the FSM National Anti-Human Trafficking Day, which was celebrated in January 22nd. So I need a volunteer. What is human trafficking? Can you stand up and read the definition for us?
Yeah. So, trafficking in persons shall mean the recruitment, transportation, transfer, harboring, or receipt of persons by means of the threat or use of force or other forms of coercion, of abduction, of fraud, of deception, of the abuse of power, or of a position of vulnerability, or of the giving or receiving of payments or benefits to achieve the consent of a person having control over another person for the purpose of exploitation.
Thank you.
Thank you, John.
That's a very, very, very long definition. Okay, so, excuse me. So when we say trafficking in person, we're just reading the bold words. Recruitment, transportation. So trafficking in person shall mean recruitment. And when we say transportation recruitment, we mean what? Margaret? When you say recruitment and transportation. My apologies to the English speakers here. But like I said, this is the training that we provide to our citizens. And when you say, okay, what is recruitment transportation? My normal answers will be transportation, car, plane. Yeah, could be. And so the key words there are recruitment. I'm reminded here I have about 20 minutes left on the presentation. So thank you, Margaret. I'll just go ahead. So this is really, so recruitment, transportation, okay? Transfer, harboring. So first you recruit the person, and then there could be a movement, okay, by means of threat or force. The key here is the threat, use of threat and force. That's coercion, okay? Then abduction, the fraud, deception, use of power, of a position of vulnerability. In Micronesia, we're very vulnerable people. In our culture, we're raised to respect the elders. Now, in the case of the Blue House case in Guam, the one I just mentioned, the recruiters were Chuukese. So, of course, the 10 women, young women, trusted the persons, and decided, yes, we want to go to Guam for better life, for better opportunity. That's why Micronesians, as I said, are very vulnerable, because of that. Another case, which I'll show there in a moment here, also involved another trafficking. This is a labor trafficking case, which involved the uncle and the aunt recruiting the niece. Okay. So just to give you an example, it doesn't have to be a foreigner recruiting. In these two cases, examples of cases, they were close relatives, people known to the victims. And exploitation shall mean at the minimum, of course, prostitution of others. in form of sexual exploitation. Forced labor, there's the forced labor, and there's there's the sex trafficking, there's the labor trafficking. Or the removal of organs. This is also something very new. In some parts of the world, there are organized crimes organizations that go around and they kidnap people. How many of you are athletes? They target young athletes, especially male, because your organs are very strong. They kidnap them, cut you up, take out whatever parts they need. They can leave you there to bleed, to die. Okay? So that's one form of exploitation. In the case of the Blue House, that was a sex trafficking case. Okay? Now, it's very important that you understand, especially on the labor trafficking. Again, back to the culture. As an aunt, if I say, okay, Margaret, I want you to come work for me, you're gonna come stay with me and help me take care of my children in Hawaii. Okay. Margaret is gonna say, well, according to Migrant Resource Center, that's labor trafficking. I'm staying with you. You're not paying me the normal salary that a servant would be making or a maid would be making. You're not paying me, and I'm taking care of your children. What do you think the drawing of the line there? Why is it not a labor trafficking? Back to the definition. If I force you, okay, or let's say I forced. Let's say you didn't want to do any of the work that I tell you to do. And I threaten you, okay, if you tell the police that I'm using you without any cause. It may be human trafficking, seriously. But because you're staying with me voluntarily, and maybe you're going to school in Hilo, and you're living in my home, and I'm paying for your some of your expenses, clothes and food and all that, you think that's trafficking? Probably not. It's not.
Although, can I make a?
Yeah, go ahead.
I think some people may actually take that as well as, take that as a form of human trafficking, especially if they're living locally and there's a problem of huge influx of people coming in without skilled labor. People, workers have been accused of not having the education and the skills to find jobs and be self-sufficient. So what they see often are households full of people, and then those get transported down to public areas. And when people look at that, they see, well, it's just a whole bunch of Micronesians that are here. But often it's probably because of this sort of form of benign human relationship trafficking that is not often based on normal standard operating procedure of laborers and work. So I wonder if where that fits into the discussions that often happen back in our countries in terms of the elders and the adults bringing people out to, say, the United States without those kind of skills that often will help or maybe prevent.
Yeah. When the 4 states were debating on whether or not to sign their Anti-Human Trafficking Act, it was that really, there was some resistance there at the beginning, and it was because of this area, culture. So the question raised by the YAP leaders were, well, where do you define culture, and where do you define, where do you draw the line between what is accepted in our culture and what now constitutes human trafficking? And it was because of this, because understanding the influx of migration coming out of the region. Now, if, let's say, you're living with an aunt who forced you, said, okay, take you down the street and said, Margaret, I want you to do this, prostitution work. And I take all the salaries, I keep that, force this against you to do this, that is definitely trafficking. If you decided to walk down the street and perform that service on your own, without any force, any coercion whatsoever, that does not constitute human trafficking. You may be cited for prostitution in that country if prostitution is illegal. Okay, so it's important to know that there has to be that coercion, there has to be the fraud, the force, in order to constitute human trafficking. The photo you see here, I wanted to show you this. Okay, first of all, what is it that you see on the poster? Different, yeah, there's a kind of the dark and the bright. You're right, that's not a computer error. We did it on purpose. But before I go into that, what do you see? A Micronesian lady, okay? She's wearing our Micronesian muumuu. She's a Micronesian lady holding it's not very clear, but it's a mop. She's holding a mop, which represents probably labor trafficking in this case. And there is a bright side and there's a dark side of her. So you are right for detecting that. And the words here, protect yourself from human trafficking. What is it that you see on human? Blood, close, but not. Any guess again? It is a barcode. Thank you, Margaret.
A what?
A barcode.
Oh.
When you're, yeah. So that means that human for sale. And the reason I brought this up is because I really like this poster. Under IOM, missions, 150 countries, 57 countries, there are a lot of posters out there on human trafficking. We created this. This is ours. This is our own Micronesian human trafficking poster. It indicates a Micronesian lady holding a broom, or a mop, or a broom, representing labor trafficking. The dark side and the bright side of her, protect yourself from human trafficking, human on sale. Okay, so I thought I'd show you that. Oh, and by the way, the lady that you saw there, that's Tasco. She's one of my volunteers. So if by chance you run into her, please do not say, oh, you're the prostitute, the victim of trafficking that Emily was showing in Hilo. So the elements of trafficking, human trafficking, there are 3 elements. First is the act. What is done? And back to the definition again. It's a recruitment to transportation, transfer, harboring, receive person. Now I must say here that this is IOM definition. Now under the FSM definition, the transportation doesn't have to exist. So it can actually happen within your own family household. Okay. The means. The act is one. Means is the second. How is it done? It's done by threat, the use of force, okay, coercion, abduction, fraud, deception, abuse of power, or vulnerability, or giving payment. There has to be payment also, or benefit to a person in control of the victim. Please do not give your passport away to anyone. Even if you're a recruiter, there's no reason why you should be giving your employer your passport. Make a copy, provide them, but keep that passport safe. And then the third element is the purpose. Why is it done? Okay, and it's for the purpose of exploitation, which includes, like I said, the exploiting, the prostitution of others, sexual exploitation, forced labor, slavery, or similar practices, including removal of organs. Statistics shows that there are 79% of sexual exploitation, predominantly women and girls. Now, the new report that's out also, the data we received, young boys aged 9 to 13 are considered very high, in high demand and high price. Okay. So, young boys as well. And then 18% forced labor. This is the case of Guam that I was referring to earlier. The photo of the two officers here, this was taken in court. So these are police officers that were involved in the case of the Blue House case. So again, they were from the state of Chuuk, lured into Guam by a Micronesian recruiter with promise of well-paying jobs in the service and hospitality. This is in the hotel. And upon arrival in Guam, they were forced to engage in prostitution work. The quote here by one of the girls says, "The first time I heard about the job, I was kind of excited and happy to come to Guam and work and to support my family." This is the same testimony you hear by a lot of our citizens for better life. We are migrating to the United States for better opportunity, better life. Case 2, I sort of touched this a little bit. Again, this is a Micronesian couple. They recruited a young woman as their domestic servant. They arranged for her travel to the United States, including her passport. Then upon arrival, they took control of the, it says here defendants because they were charged. They took control of the victim's passport, okay, and their scheme to compel the victim to work as their domestic servant, providing full-time child care, cooking, cleaning. The couple, this is an uncle and aunt of this young woman. So the young lady reported the case to a friend, who then reported the couple. Now, if I'm not mistaken, they were each fined $25,000 each and serving 15 years in jail. So this is a labor trafficking case, a great example of how vulnerable we are. The parents of the young girl allowed the girls. They were actually very happy when the uncle and the aunt were going to take her. They trusted the couple. Signs to look out for. So if you suspect of any, right, these are some of the signs. False promises on job security. Okay, you're going to be working with me in the hotel industry. I'll make sure you're working in the hotel. Upon arrival, I said, no, you're doing prostitution work. Passport taken away, lower salary than promised. Okay, I'll be paying you $1,000, but then when you arrive, not realizing, and there's a lot of suspected labor trafficking cases as well, and the lower salary than promised. Some are probably qualified as human trafficking. Some are not, and it is just how we do Micronesians. We tend to take a step forward and then we find out the details later. This is very common. So recruiters will come out to Micronesia, they hire them and say, okay, you will be working in my factory and you'll be making $1,000 maybe a month. For a lot of Micronesians, they've never ever seen $1,000 in their life. They've never made $1,000. So when they hear of $1,000, they like, whoa, finally, this is the lifetime dream that I've been wanting. I'll be making $1,000. But what they don't realize is maybe perhaps $1,000 is what they were provided for, but they have to pay for housing. And there's the utilities, and then there's the fuel charges, and there's food and water and everything else. So the $1,000 that they were promised, and including some of the recruiters would deduct the cost of the airfare. So they end up with almost nothing, maybe $100, which is really nothing. And then there's also a problem here with our citizens. They get a big chunk of money. They just go out and get drunk. And they forget that there are expenses to cover. If you don't pay rent, you will be evicted. If you don't pay for utilities, your power will be cut. So finance is one of the the modules that we cover in our pre-depart orientation training, understanding, teaching our citizens the importance of budgeting accordingly. Make sure you understand how to save money. You never know when you're gonna get sick. If you don't have a health insurance, there's a big bill coming. Excuse me, I got sidetracked there a little bit, but no or less food. Traffickers don't care whether you're fat or not. You become their property. All they want is for you to make money. Overcrowded in small apartments, that's also one of the signs. Usually traffickers will lump, they can have 20 or more victims in a very small quarter, a place, an apartment, to stay. Older man dating young women, or young women, or vice versa. Okay? And then branded with pimp designs. Now, tattooing in Micronesia has become very, very, very popular. Okay? And so one of the things we caution our young generation is make sure you understand the tattoo that you are, the design that you are tattooing on yourself. Make sure that, because some of the, it says here branded with pimp designs. Some pimps have their own design. So if they tattoo, a girl tattooed on the neck, usually it comes on the neck. It will have the design of the pimp. And so what we're telling our beneficiaries, those that attend our training, is to don't just go online and Google and say, oh, okay, this one tattoo looks really cute, and because once it's on you, I mean, it's permanent. You can take it off later, but to have it on you, it may lead you in trouble. You may end up wrong place, wrong time. You could get killed. And so that's one of the things we're telling our students in particular, to make sure that you understand. Don't just tattoo anything on yourself. And then expensive jewelries.
See some questions?
Yes.
Mike.
Any questions?
I'm just mindful of time because we promised this event, especially for the classes in here, until 3:15. So, could we entertain some questions now? And for those who wish to stay on, but in the interest of time, any questions? I have a question. Go ahead.
Have there been cases within FSM of trafficking, things happening there?
No. There are suspected cases. There has not been any proven cases yet. Any other questions?
If it wasn't actually there weren't any human trafficking laws before 2010, would any of the things that human trafficking laws be covered in other laws? Do you know of?
Good question. Human trafficking, no, but there are other, they can be charged with, like, for example, in the FSM we have prostitution. Okay, so we could have, or it could be maybe kidnapping, depending on how the investigators came up with what the crime is. But human trafficking per se, no. Unfortunately, we didn't have any laws in place then. Even the case in Guam, because it was committed prior to the passage of the human trafficking legislations, we couldn't charge them with human trafficking. Okay, human rights violation, yes, I think that's what they're filing in short, for non-human trafficking.
Hi, quick question. So would this also cover trafficking coming from the outside in? Say like workers that might be on a boat and you've got workers from abroad that are coming in. Would this also affect them?
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. Our laws does not differentiate the citizens or the nationalities. A violation is a violation.
Any other question? I have a question, but with a comment. I think it's, let me maybe just back up a little bit. The excitement I have about inviting Emmy over to speak on these two issues, well, similar issues, especially is to show, I think, what's happening back in the different countries from where we come, but also what's happening here in the state of Hawaii and maybe in Guam as well, about the citizens taking ownership of their own actions and the care of their people, of our people. I think this is what's, I'm proud that my own country, the Federated States of Micronesia, is undergoing this process of engaging in pre-departure orientations, because I think, as you know, I think that's one of those issues that is brought up a lot, especially in the media and social media, about these people are coming in, the influx of people unprepared to live in the United States, and so I just want to say that this is great that we get to hear what's happening on the front side of it. But I also want to acknowledge that there are organizations, and I'm very grateful for the local organizations that support our people. Catholic Charities, for example, and the Immigrant Resource Center, and all of the other organizations, Goodwill, the different schools, and DOE, and all the services that are provided by the ELL teachers. Those are all great, but I think the important thing, which I'm very passionate about, is the efforts that are happening by our own people. For example, Emmy referenced We Are Oceania, which is an organization now starting up in Oahu about Micronesians who have made, have found success taking up the responsibility of preparing and helping their fellow Micronesians. And so there is a desire to connect up with organizations and NGOs like the MRC to work together. And so I'm very happy that Linda and Emmy have connected. And I hope that any of the organizations that we've invited that are looking at this this live streaming to take up that, to engage Emmy back in the different countries, to maybe feed them the kind of information that you feel our citizens should know before they arrive in your country. I think that's the important thing, because there's one thing for us to prepare ourselves, right? We know our own ins and outs. We know our own pros and cons of our culture. But it's another to hear the reality of what I think the local, the Americans and the Hawaiians and the Guamanians and the Chamorros are actually experiencing, and so we want to know those. Is that correct? Would that be the correct assumption? So I guess that's not a question. I just want to make that statement, get my soapbox before 2 minutes. Any other last-minute statements or questions from the audience? Yes.
One quick question. It's concerning the aunt and the uncle with the niece. Like, how did they find out about that? Because I'm pretty sure it's still going on. We have relatives taking in nieces, nephews, and taking over them. Like, how would you reach out to them and have them contact you or call? Because they pretty much lost control to the superiors.
Yes. We have a website. We have, I have in the front here our contact numbers, Facebook. So the training is out there. Like I said, we have an office in Chuuk and in Pohnpei. You're from Marshall Islands? And we'll be opening one in Marshall Islands this month. So, which is very good. We have most of our migrants are also from the Marshall Islands. But it's really the awareness raising. We have to we're working with our government partners to make sure that the citizens, in this case Marshallese, would understand that there is such service available. So please come to the Migrant Resource Center, get trained, be part of the training, and pass the word on to your friends and your relatives that there is such service available.
So eventually it'll reach out to all migrants.
Yes, that's the plan.
Thank you.
There was one question back there. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Rose Batista, and I'm from the Immigration Immigration Information Specialist for the county. And thank you for this presentation. We came in a few minutes late, so we missed part of the beginning. But one of the things I want to comment about is, and I think this is very important, is the fact that, and it wasn't touched, I did see it being touched on upon, is the fact that while FSM citizens have the ability to live and travel freely between our countries and back home, they are also subjected to the deportation part of immigration. In other words, any criminal action for which they are convicted of, they may be subjected to immigration, deportation laws. So just wanted to catch it.
Absolutely, thank you for bringing that up, yes. Deportation is also covered in our pre-departure orientation training, you know, and we have a lot of our citizens now being deported, and which brings up another issue now with our FSM, with our government, which do not have any system set up in place for returnees, especially deportees. So, yeah, thank you.
Let me just stop here. I just want to make sure I acknowledge people who need to leave, especially if you have classes, and if you had planned to be here from 2 to 3:15. It is now 3:16, and it's up to our tech to whether he wants to turn off the live streaming. You are welcome to leave, so don't feel bad if you have to leave. But if you're able to, you have a few more minutes, or we're good.
I can
Okay.
end it with this. I'll take no last questions. All right. Well, then I just want to end this presentation with a note that prior to the passage of the laws, the human trafficking, anti-human trafficking legislations, FSM was on Tier 2 watch list under the U.S. State Department tier status. And because we work in collaboration with the National Department of Justice in launching the awareness raising campaign, the first year we reached over 6,000 in numbers who attended our workshop, our trainings. The report that came out in July of 2014, this is U.S. State Department, it's online, by the way, you can find that. U.S. State Department TIP report, or Trafficking in Persons report. FSM, I'm happy to say that we got lifted from Tier 2 watch list to Tier 2. Okay, that doesn't mean that our work is done. It just means that our report card went up, improved a little bit, but there's still a lot of work to be done. So I'm happy to be part of the team. Micronesia Center is happy to be part of the team that helped our nation in gaining the elevation of the status under the U.S. State Department.
And I think with that, thank you very much, Emmy.
Thank you all for coming. I wanted to give this is our local tie for men, necktie, to Fit, who's worked so hard in getting organizing this.
So she's dethroning my queenness, now demoting me to the king, but now I still promote her to queen.
Thank you.
Jesus, toca na vela.